Russia invaded Ukraine with 180,000 troops, which consisted of professionals, the best of the best. After almost 2 years and 310,000 eliminated, the Russian grouping has more than doubled and already exceeds 400,000, but there is a nuance. What achievements the Russian side has thanks to the intensification of mobilization processes, especially since the second half of 2022. The first thing that comes to mind is the offensive on Bakhmut, which dragged on for more than 10 months. At that time, the army already had about 250,000, but the enemy fled from Kharkiv region, and then from the right bank, Kherson region. In 2023, the Russians are struggling to hold the defense in Zaporizhia region, losing control over the southern sector near Bakhmut, cannot realize the offensive on the Liman-Kupinsk axis, experiencing a number of problems on the left bank in the Kherson region, more than a month by the forces of several combined armies, Army Corps and Tank Division trying to encircle the small town of Avdiivka. The second army in the world is fighting not for regions and cities with millions of inhabitants, but for villages and small towns. With twice as many personnel as in February 2022, the scale of operations has decreased many times, because quantity is not an indicator of quality. Russia ran out of professional army back in 2022, and there are mostly mobilized troops left. This is one of the reasons for Russia's limited offensive capabilities. From privates to officers, they are inexperienced, and their effectiveness in the combat zone is far below the units that invaded Ukraine in February 2022. Considering that the invasion forces had almost full staffing, they had no problems with providing the troops with ammunition, fuel and lubricants, they had no shortage of equipment. Now the deficit in the Russian forces has a direct impact on the capabilities of the troops. Let's assume that there are 450,000 Russian occupants in Ukraine. Tentatively, the enemy's tank grouping is more than 2,500 tanks. But is this a lot or a little? How effective can it be used? 450,000 occupants is about 560 battalion tactical groups. At the same time, their full staff complement of tanks is 6,150. That is, the deficit of tanks for such a number of troops is 60%. 560 BTGs should be equipped with 18,850 armored fighting vehicles. But according to the maximum data there are only 6,500 units, that is 35% of what is needed. A classic unit loses its combat capability and cannot effectively fulfill combat missions if losses in personnel and equipment reach 30%. In this case, we are talking about a shortage of 65% of the technical component. That is why the enemy's field of action has narrowed considerably in recent months. The Russian command is systematically saturating the combat zone with cannon fodder, but the effectiveness of a group of more than 450,000 is much lower than the effectiveness of a 180,000 strong group at the beginning of the invasion. Under such conditions, the occupation army can perform defensive functions in most cases, and that exclusively on the basis of manpower. Plugging with human shields all the holes in the supply and leveling the quality of personnel. This results in colossal losses and an unstable front that cannot be held with all efforts. Such a grouping has no ability to carry out large-scale offensive operations along a wide front, but is able to either slow down the offensive of the AFU, using the quantitative factor, or organize offensives in small locations, losing precious equipment.